Greetings, Square users. This is a demonstration of the vj.exe program, and we're going to be using DOSBox. Here is a file with a template. Now, before we can get into VJing, we need to talk about how the H and HS commands report values in Score, because they're a little bit flawed. Now, here is a file where if I type H, it says the height is 7.063 inches. And if I say HS, it says 7.016. Now, wait, first, what's the difference between H and HS? Well, H is the distance from the bottommost graphic vector on the page to the topmost graphic vector. And HS is the distance from the lowest staff line on the bottom staff to the uppermost staff line on the uppermost staff. And so these report different values, of course, but it looks like they're just about the same, 7.0 whatever. But what happens if we go into show mode? Now HS now is at 7. When it's not in show mode, HS is 7.016. Now why is that? Well, show mode fills out the page using the actual graphic vectors that are being used for drawing the various symbols. The only thing it can't fill out are the text items, obviously. But for reasons that are now HS should be unaffected by this. The H command should be, when you go into show mode like this and you do H 7.059, if I go out, H 7.063, and that's because, well, the top of this little treble clef right here is probably just a little bit higher in this primitive stick figure form than it is when it's filled out with the actual graphic symbol. So that explains that. But HS, there really shouldn't be a difference. Well, why is there? Because for reasons unknown, these numbers that appear to the sides of the staves are counted when HS is computed. So if you go into show mode, then they're not apparent. They're not there on the screen. So you get the actual HS. And if you're not in show mode, then it's actually counting the top of this 15, which is a hair over this line. Okay, well, then you would think, oh, well, then all I have to do is go into show mode when I'm, doing HS. Well, that's only true if you're using Score 3. And this is one of the things that makes me appreciate Score 3 over Score 4. If we go into Score 4, and we go into show mode, what happens? Well, the numbers remain. So you're stuck with them. So the HS is also going to be flawed in Score 4 because of this one little thing. Leland is trying to be helpful by leaving the numbers in. Well, there's only one way that you can assuredly get the right HS given this, and that is to eliminate those numbers. And the way you do that is you set P12 to 1 on all of your staves, and then they disappear. So here we are in Score 4, and now I can type HS and I get the actual size, which is 7 inches. Okay, great. So actually I'm going to do my work in Score 311. So let's go back here. All right, now let's talk about the VJ command here in Score. If we do a raw VJ, the numbers here, there are 3 parameters. The minimum vertical space steps between objects, horizontal space steps, and the minimum steps between staves. And in fact, if you read the help screens, he says explicitly the first number sets the minimum vertical distance in scale steps. The second number sets the desired horizontal clearance. And the third number sets the minimum vertical distance between staves. The third number is really unimportant for our purposes, so we'll never be using it. The first 2 numbers, we'll just be using 3 and 3. That's a good compression. You can also do 2 and 2 if things are really tight and you need to really conserve as much space as possible. But if I do this, boom, we compressed everything down to a minimum, right? Well, lovely. Let's say now we want to spread this out to 6 inches. Well, if we just type HS 6, 1, well, the problem is that everything has been spread unevenly. There's more space here than there is down here. And that's really ugly. We don't want that. When we're spreading things out and there's nothing there, it should be perfectly smooth. So how do you do this? Well, the VGA again, save it, exit, and then we use VGA.exe. Set the HS to 6, and it tells us the current HS of the input file is 4.7. That's exact. This is what we wanted, 6. And this is what it got for us, which is just a hair's breadth off of 6. This will happen when you're dealing with real numbers in programming. Sorry. So we're going to say that that's exactly the same thing as 6, because all practical purposes it is. Now we go back in, look, and boom. Our file now has an HS of 6. And that's because the VGA.exe program only puts in the space that is needed between consecutive staves when it's spreading things out to whatever the desired HS is. In the original file, which is saved in this backup, it could see that it didn't need to add the same amount of space in all of the gaps. What scores routine does is add equal dollops. So right now the HS is 4.7. Let's say we want to move it up to 6. Well, that's 1.3 basically that needs to be added. Well, what scores routine does is it just counts up the number of gaps, divides that into the space that is needed to be added, and then there's just one little value that it uses, and then just adds it in between all the white spaces. So if you do HS here, boom, you get this uneven spacing. Not true with VGA.exe. It's more intelligent than that. It can tell where space needs to be added and by how much, so that you get a nice proportionate, harmonious spread. And in the next demo, we're going to look at an example when we actually have a note in place that's going to create some problems for the routine, which will be solved by VGA.exe. Thank you.